right, welcome to another edition of the Baseline Scoop. I'm your host, Zach Ciavolella, here with my lovely co-host, Justin Crosby. Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Good
Good.
morning.
Great. It's a good time right now, it hasn't been the easiest off season from day one for Philadelphia, as
Right.
is kind of the norm as of late. But we had some good news recently. The Brooklyn Nets deferred their pick to 2023, taking the Sixers 2023 pick and instead leaving Philadelphia with the 23rd overall pick in this draft. So draft season is back on, baby.
Yes, I know. Some off season fun.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite time of the year, draft season. It's that and the trade deadline are just, I mean, the excitement is just unreal. So
Right.
really a lot of good. It's not the most overwhelming draft, right?
Hmm.
But I feel like there's a lot of really good quality role players deep within this draft. So
Agreed.
that's kind of where the benefit goes, and that's what the Sixers are looking for right now. Anyway, obviously we'd love
Absolutely.
to duplicate Tyrese Maxey level success in the
Hmm.
draft, but there's nothing wrong with landing a Desmond Bain type player or a Brandon Clark type player.
Hmm. Who are
This
both
late in the draft,
who are
or
both
both.
good in
Yeah.
their own right and are
Oh
key
yeah.
cogs to their team. So
Exactly. Exactly. So really exciting this draft season. Already looked at a few players. We've had a few prospect profiles, not quite in-depth scouting yet, but prospect profiles at PSN, talking about a few guys. So on today's show, we're just going to talk about some of the guys that we're looking at in the draft. Some that
yep.
the 76ers are looking at, some that they should be looking at if they're not. Really just trying to figure out who can help the team out, the most, or should they even, I guess where we'll start, like, should they even keep the pick, right? That's the question on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, I think so. I think they should. I feel like there are things where in the Sixers they need low cost, low cap help for the team. And my thought is all these other championship teams
Yeah.
find these guys at the end of drafts who help wind up being
Yeah.
key primary contributors to their championship run or their conference
Hmm.
final run. Why can't the Sixers do the same? I know the Sixers will want to try to package the pick and maybe a player to get a veteran to help right now, which is okay depending on who the veteran is.
Hmm.
But some low cost, low cap help that can help short term and long term, I think they should. I think they should keep the pick. That's just what I
Yeah.
feel. Now, I don't know if they go out and get Patrick Beverly with the 23rd pick and like Danny Green.
Yeah.
I'm for it, but I don't know. We're gonna go get somehow Daniel House or something. I'm cool.
Yeah. No, I absolutely get it. And I think you're right. It depends on the player that you bring in. Two who make a lot of sense. If the Wolves are going to part with Beverly, which it's a tough ask, but it's definitely something the Sixers should pursue,
Hmm.
because if there is a chance, he is a player they should target. Additionally, Marcus Morris, kind of, same vein, but looking at a
Hmm.
big instead of a guard.
Right.
Uh, do you send over like Korkmaz and Green and 23
Right.
for Marcus Morris? Because that's not terrible value one way or the other, because the Clippers are in kind of a similar position as us in that sense. I think it's fair to say, having Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and a wealth of role players from there, they're a little better off than we are.
Right.
Uh, but
They could
they
spare
really need draft picks after they got Paul George. So
and they could spare some of their role players as well because they
sure,
do have guys like Amir Coffey or you
yeah.
know BJ
So
Boston or
BJ
whatever.
Boston, yeah, exactly,
So they can they re-signed Rocco.
yeah.
Norman Powell's going to play his role. So they have a bevy of
Hmm.
role players, and you could see some of the minutes in the future shaping out a little weird. Batum is probably going to resign, so it's just
Yeah.
it's just they can afford to give up somebody like Marcus Morris.
No, I agree, and they're already talking about him being on the outs. Um, with Morris, and just that it's time to move on. And I think one thing that was clear, with the Robert Covington extension, like, that was like crystal clear, because
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty obvious Nick Batum's going to be coming back. Robert Covington, between those two, that's a lot of your minutes at the 4 right there. You're probably going to see some Kawhi minutes at the 4.
Yep.
There's just only so much time,
Right.
So to have 15 million, I think Morris is owed something like 30 million over the next 2 years. To
Mm-hmm.
have something like that just kind of around, it doesn't really
Yeah.
make sense for either party,
Right.
So he makes much more sense in a city like Philadelphia, for instance, where assuming a Tobias Harris trade, which is still looking likely, is a lot more playing time available to him. So
Mm-hmm.
before we get into the prospects and kind of as we continue to talk about this trade, a possibility, right? So basically how it works, you can't trade the pick, just for those who don't know, you can't trade the pick before you make the selection.
Right.
Okay. Once you make the selection, then you can trade that prospect or the rights to that prospect, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but you have to wait until the first day of the new league year before it officially goes through. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that being, I believe, July 1st, about a week's time, right, between the draft and actually happening. So rarely, can't even think of one off the top of my head. So rarely does a hiccup happen in that 1 week that these trades don't go through. So
Exactly.
if you hear about this deal happening, it's more than
More than
likely going to
likely.
happen. Yeah,
Yep.
by that day. So,
Yep.
you'll go ahead and you may actually see the chance for the Sixers to land a Patrick Beverly, land a Marcus Morris, whatever the case may be. Additionally, what could also potentially happen is the Sixers could trade up. That's something that we don't want to rule out as well. I forget exactly who it was. Throwing out a trade. Oh, you know who it was? It was Francis Parker on
Yes.
Twitter throwing out possibility
Kobe
of Matisse Thybulle in 23 for Kobe
23.
White in 18, right?
Right.
Something
It,
like that, absolutely in the realm of possibility. I mean, let's
correct.
let let's work just on that trade first. Like, what do you think about that deal, Justin? Like, is that good value for Philly?
I think it's good value for Philly. I think that Matisse is an excellent defensive player. Offensively, he's regressed, but it's kind of hard to understand what Matisse's value is right now. But the Sixers could get a willing shooter and a guard and Kobe White, and then be able to take 18 and get in the realm of possibility to get those athletic wings that they're really after. I think that would be a great trade for the Sixers because then essentially you would be replacing Thibault that you've lost in the trade, and then you get a backup point guard who's a high volume shooter who will be able to run the pick and roll or catch and shoot. So that would be a trade that if it was something that was really explored,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be mad at it.
No, not at all. It's kind of like just trading one extreme for the other. Going defense, turning it into offense, um, and for Philadelphia, what they need both offense and defense. Like, let's not play around. Like you want to say like, oh, they had defense to spare, so they went and they got some. That's not really the case in Philadelphia. Like, you have offensive players. You have. I'm just gonna say Tyrese Maxey,
Mm-hmm.
because we're looking at consistent offense. You're looking at Maxey. You're looking at Embiid, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got to see what Harden is. I have a lot of faith in Harden, especially given the recent workout videos that our own AB
Mm-hmm.
dropped. Um,
Before you go
I'm
on,
hopeful.
hold on. Before you go on, I will
Yeah.
tell you this. One of my friends texted me and said, I thought we were over the workout videos. We went from one from Ben, the
Listen,
shooting, to two
listen.
to the heart.
But we've actually seen Harden do it in a game before, and I think that's the difference, or at least that's just what I'm going to tell myself, so I don't drive myself crazy. But listen, you got to do what you got to do. That's all we have in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest. We have the workout videos. We can't see Harden take the court against Boston, against Brooklyn.
Right.
He's coming back to Philadelphia. Like, let's not play around with that. Like,
No, for sure.
so seeing that he's actually in shape, that means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it translates to the season,
Right.
and he takes care of himself. Because that's one thing I've noticed with Harden is that he kind of like resets in the offseason. He gets in shape. and then the regular season happens, and he kind of just like uses the games to stay in shape.
Yep.
And that's kind of the problem. And that's something that Doc Rivers kind of enables with, obviously remember George Yang's comments about how the team doesn't really practice,
Right.
Which still remains a huge problem to me to this day. So hopefully Harden finds some time to actually keep it up during the season,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't just use the games to stay in shape.
Right.
Like it's a great workout. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I can't even imagine, but like that's not good enough that's not what the other top players in the NBA are doing.
Right. To sustain the level of play
Yes,
over a
exactly.
6-month span.
Yeah. So we got off on a huge Harden tangent, right away. That wasn't even the point of what I was getting at. Tyrese Maxey, consistent offensive player. Joel Embiid, consistent offensive player. After that, things start getting a little murky, right?
Definitely.
And then defensively, you have Joel Embiid, consistent offensive player. Matisse Thybulle, who is like he evens out as a more than plus defender,
Mm-hmm.
but he does have a lot of hills and valleys to his game. You
He's
know,
like a pitcher.
uh,
He's
well,
like
you know who he's like. Sean Bernard just wrote on this, and he just said he's like Trevon Diggs of the Dallas Cowboys. That's exactly what
that's
he
a
is.
good one.
He forces a lot of turnovers, makes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
flashy defensive plays. Uh, he misses a lot of opportunities, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guys burn him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's definitely something to be said about that. And he's still like youngish in his NBA career, so you hope that he can come along further defensively, offensively. Uh, at some point, you can't just be so tied to a player, because of some personal affiliation for them. Though, like there's a time to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Like thought, and not that Thible's still beloved like he was. Obviously, what happened with the Toronto series that changed so many people's opinions of him.
Mm-hmm. It
And
did.
now, like, you got people in Philadelphia who are like, they will drive him to the airport. Like, they'll send him anywhere for anything, which
Yep.
is a complete overreaction. But you have to, he can't be untouchable like he was at the trade deadline. Like,
Right.
you can't have that,
Yep.
So anyway, with Kobe White, you're getting that offense. Kobe White, same draft. Also, I won't call Thibault any kind of bust, disappointment, anything like that, because where he was drafted, Thibault's production has been about that, if not exceeds that,
I agree.
right? But Kobe White, being I think the 7th pick in that draft, yeah, he's a
He's
little closer
definitely
to that bust
underachieved.
territory.
He's underachieved
He's an
for sure.
underachieved. So far in his career, still a
Correct.
young guard. Younger than Thibault. There's a chance, that he can turn all this around. We don't know. He's not
Mm-hmm.
even in his second contract yet, and
Mm-hmm.
for point guards, they notoriously take a long time before they develop. So really, there's an opportunity there to unlock something. Bigger thing for me is moving up from 23 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trading up, though, I might try and trade up even higher. I might look at like the Charlotte Hornets at 15.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is probably the biggest trade up target for me, right, is Tari Eason out of
Mm-hmm.
LSU. If the Sixers can find a way to land him, which they just might at 15, I've heard things about Eason possibly going late lottery. Maybe he falls a little past that. Who knows? Um, if they can land Tari Eason, because this dude, from everything I've heard, is the next OG Anunoby. Like, I mean, that's huge
Mm-hmm.
right there, honestly. And he's got near Kawhi measurables, right? Defensive intensity, like the shot's going to take a little bit to come along, but if you were talking about trading like Thibault 23 and basically whatever else Charlotte wants,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, like I'm all for it. For a player like that, have you gone over Tari Eason at all?
Yeah,
Familiar
yeah,
with him at all?
yep.
Is that a guy you like?
Yes, I do. But then I was doing some reading, and I mean, one of the things that came up when I was doing some reading was definitely just consistency on shooting. Um, but his measurables are great. I feel like he would definitely fit a role in Philadelphia. I do think that honestly, getting up to 18 should be able to get him. I feel like if he
Okay.
gets in the lottery, I feel
Yeah.
like it's a reach to me. It's a reach. Like if he gets into the lottery, that's a reach to me.
Hmm.
But people
Okay.
are saying that he could turn out to be the best defensive player in his class
Yeah.
coming out. But I do like him. I
I mean, it
just
depends on how you feel about certain like. I don't want to call him boom or bust because like that. I feel like that does a disservice to them. But how guys like Jeremy Sochan really turn out, how guys like Ousmane Dieng really turn out.
right.
Even Johnny Davis. It depends. And you know what? I'm surprised. I'm surprised Jalen Duren is still so high on a lot of these mocks. Like
Hmm.
still going in the top. I mean, Tankathon has him going higher.
7. I saw somebody
Yeah.
drafting
Well, he's
something like
gone. He's gone like anywhere. That's the thing. Is like and people just love putting centers in Portland for some reason. Like I don't think that's where they go. I think they go with a guy like for me. It's one of these three. It's Keegan Murray, AJ Griffin, or Dyson Daniels for Portland. Slight chance, like wild card, Benedict Mathurin. That's it. Like those are the
right,
guys for Portland, or they
right.
trade the pick. Like that's it. So
More likely to
in any
trade it.
case, there's a lot of I will call it volatility in this draft. When you're looking at the projections and everything like that, no one's players are shifting even
Hmm.
now is essentially what I'm getting at. So while it's I still think possible Torrey Eason goes in the lottery, perhaps with the 13th pick. Perhaps Cleveland really likes him at 14. They think that he's
Right.
an even better version of oh
Isaac
my
Okoro.
gosh, what's that wing? Isaac Okoro. Thank you. Uh, yeah, maybe they think that he's an even better version of that, though he would be extremely redundant with him,
Hmm.
or whatever the case may be. But if you can get him at 18, I mean that's amazing right there. But even if you can't, there's still a lot of good players, in the 18 range, in the 23 range,
Hmm.
and one player who I'm a big fan of, and I know a lot of Sixers fans are as well, is EJ Liddell out of Ohio State.
Me
I mean, what
too.
do you think about Liddell?
Me too. I like his game. I think that one, if the Sixers were able to get Liddell, I think having him and Tobias on the same team is a little but um
Yeah.
it could
I mean,
definitely
a
work.
rookie's not going to be like he'll be like the backup, at first,
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
like
Um
year one, not that big a deal, and probably Harris is gone by year two at the
to
latest.
but I like him a lot. He has some all right, so he's 6'7". He's a solid guy. He's definitely lost some weight since his freshman year,
Boy,
got his body
howdy, is
together.
he solid? I mean, man, it's
Like
like a brick.
and but his just you can tell that his measurables and certain
Yeah,
things like one terrific shot blocker for 6'7",
yeah,
like such a crazy
yeah.
rim
Oh, it's
protector
crazy.
at 6'7". It's crazy. He has such a knack for getting blocks and just protecting the rim, whether it's going straight up or
Yeah.
whatever. He's really good at that. I like the fact that he has some switchability at 6'7", although
Hmm.
some quicker guards may get by him, but he can switch out
Oh,
on some
definitely.
guys and
Yeah,
really be able to hold his own. I like the
yeah.
fact that he has a nice. Well, with the Sixers, he could play small ball center maybe, but it might be ball
Hmm.
Paul's realm. But in general, he seems like to be a solid shooter. Seems like he's improved his
Yeah.
stroke. If he were to be in the corners, it would be money from the
Yeah.
corners. Also, I like the fact and I do like that for the most part,
Hmm.
he's a willing passer. Now, sometimes he can fall
Yeah.
into the contested Tobias mid-range type of game.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that hero ball almost, yeah.
but overall, I like him a lot. I feel like he would be a great fit. Um, I feel like he was shooting 37% from three last year
Hmm.
on 4 attempts a game. I mean, for a 6'7" guy who plays small ball center, that's a good volume. We can't
Yeah, it's
even
not
get
bad.
guys to take 1 3 a game, let alone
Yeah.
get a guy to take 4. Um,
Yeah.
I do think that he will have to make some changes. The one thing I noticed was that in college he
Hmm.
won't call it gamble. Like he has some real good defensive IQ, but he goes
Yeah.
for the help block a lot. So
Yeah.
he'll leave his man open in the corner to
Mhm.
go get a block. And I just think that there are so many good passers in the NBA that he's
Mhm.
going to get burned sometimes doing that. I've literally seen Luka
Yeah.
Doncic go to the hole, throw the ball behind his head to a guy
Mhm.
in the corner
Yeah.
because the help was just committed right away. But
Yeah. I mean, he loves blocking shots like almost to a fault. Like, and the thing is, like, it's funny. So I just did the prospect profile on Liddell. Um, One of the reasons that he like loves blocking shots is like, so his mom was like a collegiate volleyball player, right?
mm-hmm,
And Liddell comes from a great family. Whole family is like incredibly close.
mm-hmm,
There is, I'm not sure who did it. It's somewhere out there on YouTube. There's a video on the Liddell family that kind of like goes through everything and
mm-hmm,
their like recent history and everything like that. It's absolutely fantastic,
mm-hmm,
honestly. Like, so again, great family, very close. His dad was offensive lineman for I want to say it was Illinois State.
mm-hmm.
Um, and his mom, like I said, she played volleyball also for Illinois State. She was a middle blocker, so so he, she really was able to show him a lot growing up. I know as far
Yeah,
as like blocking shots, and so that becomes like something personal to him.
yeah,
He loves blocking shots. Like again, like to a fault. Like he will try and help out to get those extra blocks, and like you said, he'll leave a guy wide open in the corner, something like that. If that's your, one of your biggest problems, like that's honestly not a huge deal
no,
to
no
me. Because at least that shows you care, like
effort,
it's definitely something he'll have to work on. Don't
but it
get me
shows
wrong.
effort,
Exactly.
which the Sixers don't have a lot of
No, they don't.
currently.
Well, so obviously we heard Joel Embiid's comments right after the series that they lost, right? They talked about PJ Tucker in particular, how they don't have a guy like that, right? Well, let's look at some of the players that Liddell models his game after, right? PJ Tucker is like first and foremost one of the players that he models his game after,
Mm-hmm.
right there. So, you're looking at a guy who can play that PJ Tucker role
Yep.
and then something, because I think he's naturally talented more than PJ Tucker was. We
Yes.
talk about Liddell; he is one of the best verts in the draft. Like that's part of what's crazy. Is like there's a little Barkley to him in a sense. Like he's undersized, but he can hop, man. Like
Yes. And that's what
absolutely
surprised me
crazy.
too.
Yeah.
And I did watch something as well when I was doing my research on him where he talked about knowing that he needed to get in better shape, and that changed everything for him. And
Yeah.
him dropping some pounds helped him get more athleticism,
Yeah.
so he'd be able to make those plays. And knowing that he needed to be in good shape to be playing the undersized five because you're banging in there with the
Yeah.
big guys,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
stuff like that. So I agree. He does have a little, like, I think that Liddell, if he was drafted by the Sixers
Yeah.
on this team, on this current roster,
Hmm.
say no trades happen on this current
Yeah.
roster, he could be and this is just modest, he could be a 8 to 10 point a game off the bench guy, modest,
Yeah.
and get 6 rebounds.
Yeah. I mean, assuming that he's allowed to play. It's
Because of that. But he's an older guy, though. He's an older guy.
yeah,
He's a
no, you're
30-year
true. It's
guy.
true. I mean, and that does matter some, and that's potentially an advantage. So he's a junior, right? He's gonna be it's gonna be exactly 21 and a half, or just about at the draft, right? So that's someone that he may have more faith in. Doc Rivers, that is. Um, but I'm super interested in that because I definitely agree. Like if he's given like a loose enough leash, 100%, he could average like 8-ish points. He could be putting up like 3 threes a game
Mm-hmm.
because his role is going to change. Like
Mm-hmm.
he worked a lot of the post and a lot of the mid range in college. He was like a top 2 guy offensive source at Ohio
Mm-hmm.
State. Um, if he comes to the Philadelphia 76ers, he's a lot further down that list. So in that chance, like he's going to become a lot more of like an athletic 3-and-D rebounder type. Again, basically PJ Tucker. Some of the other guys that he models his game after: Draymond Green, Grant Williams, PJ Washington. Hopefully, just offensively, PJ Washington, because yeah, it's a little rough defensively. But all said and done, like those are some great players to look at if you're like an undersized four. So uh, I think personally he most closely resembles Grant Williams. Just looking at his game, and it's crazy because it's like NBA Grant Williams, because college Grant Williams was so much different. So and that's just part of Tennessee. Like Tennessee, they don't encourage their guys to shoot like it's crazy. Jaden Springer didn't shoot like nobody shot in Tennessee. That's just how the team runs. It's their choice. It's whatever. But as soon as we saw Grant Williams come to the NBA, we started to see him like expand his range a little bit, work a little more 3-point range. And now with Boston, like he was huge in these playoffs,
Huge.
like absolutely huge for them. Like,
Guarding
and that's
Giannis.
he's gonna be, for years and years, they're starting four,
Mm-hmm.
like that, and to get him late in the draft, like fantastic for Boston. Very jealous for Philadelphia, but there's a chance here to kind of get our own Grant Williams and EJ
Mm-hmm.
Liddell. Just
Yep.
with the switchability defensively, with the ability to block shots. Like I would love to say he's Draymond. Nobody's Draymond, right? Like that's just
That's
everyone
special.
wants to put a comparison for a prospect as like a Hall of Fame level player.
Yeah.
It's just not realistic. Could Liddell do it? Hell if I know. Like maybe. Like that's up to him, basically.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because
but
my comparisons
yeah,
for him were Grant Williams, which we talked about.
yeah,
He
yeah,
has a little Tobias Harris in his game, and also Paul Millsap.
yeah. I can definitely see the Tobias Harris, and especially it's not all positive, because like you said, he kind of falls in love with that mid range a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tobias Harris there is a good amount of him in there, and Paul Millsap's a really interesting one. And what I like about the Paul Millsap comparison that you brought up is specifically when you talk about like that athleticism for an undersized guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean Millsap could kind of fly, like
Yeah.
in his
In
younger
his heyday.
days, like
You got to
yeah,
think on the Atlanta Hawks team that won 60 games and went to the conference finals, right? And they blew through the Eastern Conference, right? Blew through the Eastern Conference. Paul
yeah,
Millsap was their starting four, and Al Horford was their starting five. And Al Horford is
yeah.
6'9", and Paul Millsap is 6'8".
Mm-hmm.
So, and they were
Yeah.
defensively good.
Yeah. I mean, I think if they were like the problems with the Hawks is like, right, they were a little ahead of their time. And they also just didn't have a star, was the problem. Like that's the obvious one. They didn't have a star. But they also were like ahead of their time. And it's kind of a shame. Like you have these teams that um are transformative in the NBA. But if they do that like 5 years too early or whatever, they're like the test model. So it's like they may never win by doing that. Like not every team is like Golden State where they change the game and have the success like that. And that shows like a lot of like real like kudos to Golden State for like for nailing that down and everything like that. But there just wasn't that opportunity in Atlanta. If Atlanta had a guy like Steph, obviously that changes a lot of things, but you still need that star at the NBA level. At least bare minimum, I'll say a Jimmy Butler level player. And Atlanta just didn't have that. So
They did.
it's a shame. Al Horford's now in his finals. Good luck to him, I guess. I don't know. I don't care. Go Golden State. I'll say that. Listen, they used to be a Philadelphia team, right? So
Yes.
I
So you got
think
to
I
root for
think if
them.
you're looking between them or Boston, you know who to cheer for. So, but in any case, to sum it all up, EJ Liddell, fantastic prospect for the Philadelphia 76ers. It's not just Liddell though. Like even if Liddell for some reason he better not fall past 23 if the Sixers are picking there, if you ask me. But let's say he goes above, right? Let's say that, I don't know, Memphis loves taking players that we want, right? So let's say that they take him. Let's say that the Nuggets take him. He'd be a really good pick for Minnesota at 19. Like there's a possibility he's not there at 23. So who do you turn to, right? Well, one player that has been connected to Philadelphia a lot too, the Sixers met with him, we know for certain, is Marjan Beauchamp, right? So Justin, like Beauchamp, a lot of like Thibault comparisons, have already come out. The wingspan, the athleticism, the defensive ability. Does that worry you at all, the Thibault comparisons, or do you think he's different enough offensively that it's not an issue?
So I think he's different enough offensively. So here were my comparisons when doing some stuff on him. So first, a little Herb Jones, a little Jeremy Grant, early Jeremy
Yeah.
Grant, and a
Yeah.
little early Robert Covington. And the reason I said that offensively is because right now Thibault is supposed to be a 3-and-D shooter, but Thibault is a straight line driver. If
Yeah.
he's not shooting, he's got a
Yeah.
straight line drive. Beauchamp's offensive ability, he does have a little game to him. One, he started off before he had a growth spurt, he played a lot of guard before he became 6'6" or 6'7" to
Yeah,
get the
that helps.
wingspan. Two, he has a little dribble pull up game. It's a little it's definitely a little smooth. It's not super
Mhm.
consistent, but he has a little dribble pull up because I believe a
Mhm.
lot of guys have not guarded him out deep. So he
Yeah.
learned to say, okay, I'm gonna get into my spot, get comfortable, and shoot my little dribble pull up.
Mhm.
We've never seen Matisse ever try any type of dribble pull up or anything like that. So I think his
Yeah.
game is more along offensively, further along offensively than Matisse's
Mhm.
offensive game is right now. And if he can give you anything what Matisse does defensively, you could do it. And honestly, you get Beauchamp with an NBA shooting coach,
Mhm.
even lethal shooter, I don't care. You get him with somebody,
Yeah.
his mechanics a little bit better, more comfortable, and I think he could be a guy that can really, really contribute.
Yeah, one other difference, between Thibault and Beauchamp is like Beauchamp as a cutter is such a step up from Thibault. Like Thibault, we saw a lot of growth in it, and I'm not trying to knock Thibault, right? Because but uh, there's a really good player in Thibault, and that's part of the reason I like Beauchamp so much is that I think that he can be a better Thibault, like a more complete Thibault, I should say. Maybe he's not as good defensively, but a little more complete offensively. And getting back to that whole like he's a cutter instead of what Thibault is. Like Thibault grew in the dunker spot, and that's about all he could do offensively. Like occasional spot up three or dunker spot, like that. That's him. So you have the dunker spot. That's a role that Marjan Beauchamp could definitely play. But being able to cut within the flow of an offense, like I mean, that's like living in the dunker spot on steroids. Like that's what like players in the dunker spot. I hate to say it, that's where you hide players, right? Like you need
Absolutely.
a certain type of player who can like actually play there. To be fair,
Hmm.
like you need a player who can actually make the dunker spot worthwhile.
Hmm.
But if you have a guy who can cut, right? You have an athlete like Beauchamp who's cut, like that's a guy you could put him in the dunker spot. You could have him cut in the flow of the offense, keep the ball moving, right? With James Harden, like look at how much better Thibault was with Harden. Imagine how good Beauchamp would be with Harden, because he's not just limited to the dunker spot. He could work down there, he could work shoot outside, he could also cut at any point, cut baseline, cut from the top of the key, wherever. And I just think that'd be fantastic with Philadelphia.
And Beauchamp is better in transition, finishing wise, than
100%.
Thibault.
100%.
Like Thibault can dunk the ball, but it seems like he misses every single layup.
Yeah.
No touch.
Well, I mean, it's kind of odd, with such a defensively skilled player, but he's got like a little bit of stone hands, like a little Nerlens Noel hands to a degree, like it's just not. I don't know. It's not fluid. It's not.
Hmm.
There's something about it, and I think
Hmm.
that's part of the issue with his shot too, and why we haven't seen it is like I think in addition because he works on his shot. Like
Hmm.
it's not like he doesn't shoot threes in the offseason, right?
Right.
You're just not seeing progression with it. And I mean, just from what I can tell from the rest of his game, I know his hands haven't improved at all. Right.
Hmm.
So that that's part of when you shoot your shot, like you need like control over your hands to properly guide the ball. Like I'm grasping at straws, but I'm just looking for why hasn't Thibault gotten better, and that's the only thing I can come up with. So, if he were to find a way to improve his hands in all aspects of the game, maybe that helps the shot in the long run. But Beauchamp's already there, you know. I, reset, start with Beauchamp, right? And I think Philadelphia's a lot better off.
Agreed.
Yeah. So
Agreed.
I mean, Marjan Beauchamp, right? So he is kind of famous, for going JUCO to G League. It's
But he
been a
was still
journey,
a
man.
top.
For him.
But he was still a top prospect, right? Like he
Yeah,
was
no,
just.
100%. Well, he had
because he moved
what do you
around
have?
different schools,
When
right?
COVID happened, he got like well, so it all started. He was looking at schools. COVID happened. He ended up getting COVID. He had some kind of like respiratory issue or something like that after COVID. Um, and so like he still had like some interest from like other teams. Um, but long story short, he ended up being like, no, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to the G League. And I think it's worked out great for him. The fact that he's still considered uh, a first round pick, potentially a top 25 pick, like that's like still considering all that had happened to him, like that's far from the worst outcome. And so I think that makes him a potential steal as well as like the bones are there for this, high end NBA player. If you can get him at 23, like more power to you, you know?
Exactly. And at that point in the draft, definitely someone you could take a chance on.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like you could do so much worse and he's still somebody that has a lot, like he's only what he'll be like not even 21
Hmm.
by the draft. Like no, like there's still a lot of future potential in him. So, I don't know. I have faith and he was like he was a somewhat willing shooter. Like that's part of the other
Yeah.
issue that, that there is with Thibault is like, he doesn't like he just doesn't enjoy shooting as well. And it's like, well, Beauchamp, first of all, he shot the ball 11 times per game, like overall, just flat. Like that's
Mhm.
already an improvement, right? And then he shot 3 times a game from three. Like that's not bad. Like if you can, increase that ratio a little more on the 3-point side a little bit, which is probably what he'll do as an NBA role player. Like, yeah, that's just it's a much more aggressive player than Thibault is, effectively.
And I do think Thibault's regression offensively. I mean, it could be like we talk about the hands and some of the mechanics, whatever. I also
Yeah.
think that he lost confidence. Um, two parts. He lost confidence maybe because the shot wasn't going in,
Yeah.
and two, I feel like Doc uses him as like you said Trayvon Diggs, but like a
Yeah.
pitcher. Like if he's playing
Mhm.
well, he'll play him. If Matisse
Yeah.
isn't doing anything offensively, you're out of here. Like
Exactly.
you give him the first quarter, maybe a little bit of the first half, maybe a little bit of
Yeah.
the third quarter, and then Matisse. I've seen Matisse start games and
Yeah.
only play 10 minutes because
Mhm.
he's not doing anything offensively. He's clogging up the lane. We'd rather
Yeah.
play Danny and Korkmaz than or just play.
Yeah.
Let's not even put Danny in there. We'd rather play Korkmaz because we know Korkmaz, although he's having a really bad shooting year, we know
Yeah.
he's at least going to shoot the ball.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let me say, like, first of all, I think you're 100% right. Like, that absolutely happens. I've seen that so many times. I think Thibault is, and I don't even think that the concept by Doc is inherently wrong. My
Hmm.
problem with it is that Thibault is too good and supposed to be too important of a player to the Sixers team to be doing that.
Hmm.
You need to have some sort of consistency. Like you can do that, like with a George Niang. I feel you can do that with even Paul Reed to a degree, right?
Hmm.
But like Thibault effectively is supposed to be one of your top seven, if not six players, right?
Hmm.
If not even higher, right? So
Hmm.
you can't give him that kind of inconsistency because especially for a player who already struggles offensively, like how are you supposed to find, and again, the key word, consistency, if you're
Hmm.
not playing like that. So
Hmm.
I definitely agree. I don't know that it's going to change, but it should
Hmm.
basically. So all right, so we're looking at other players now. We got Liddell. We've talked about even Tari Eason before that. Marshawn Beauchamp. So Justin, you got a guy that you're a pretty big fan of, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right. And I hate it because with my last name, I hate it when people keep trying to get my last name. But uh, Jake Laravio, right, out of Wake Forest. I hope I got that
Yes.
right. Uh, I'm not as familiar, right? I didn't watch a ton of Wake Forest tape. I haven't, gone through his scouting tape or anything like that yet. Why don't you tell me a little bit about Jake and why you think he'd be a good fit in Philadelphia?
Yeah. So first, so Jake, he's a 6'8", 6'8" forward for Wake Forest. He played the 4 at Wake Forest. Um, what got me through going through some of the prospect, and now he's projected to be a little bit later than 23 or even maybe early second round. But what I thought what drew me to him is, first things first, everybody talks about his feel for the game, right? And meaning that he has that high basketball IQ. And that's something that, although you have a lot of guys who are athletic or, bring more things athletically to the table than uh Lavaria. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not
He
even that
brings,
hard of a name. I don't
I
know
know.
why we're messing with it. Like,
But he just
forgive
does
us, Jake.
everything. So all right, so my comparison to him while watching film was
Yeah.
a little bit of Joe Ingles with a little bit of Kyle Anderson. The reason I
Okay.
looked at Kyle Anderson because some of his drives are a little bit slow motion, but he knows how to kind of use that pace to kind of get where he's going on like when he's attacking the
Yeah.
closeout. The Joe Ingles comes from the point that he can literally on the offensive end, and we say this a lot because it's the NBA, but the Sixers don't have enough guys who can shoot, drive, and pass. We have guys who could
I'll
just
take
shoot.
one of those, but yeah.
We have guys who could just pass. We have guys who just play defense. There's not a lot of all-around guys. Now, athletically, he may not have the wingspan or the super athleticism to be a lockdown player. He does hustle, so you get points for that. He does battle on defense, but so he's a transfer. So he transferred to Wake Forest. So he's a transfer. His game jumped when he got more opportunities. He's a do-it-all forward. He's a knockdown shooter that can space the floor. Now, he shot 38% from 3, and he was money in the corners. He didn't shoot a high volume of threes. I think he shot 2.5 threes a game, or to the point of even if he doubled, if he shot 6 threes a game in the NBA, if given that chance, I think that he would be a really good shooter. When he attacks closeouts, because he's not super athletic, he knows how to use crafty fakes and finishes, little pump fakes and stuff like that to get his buckets. He also operated a lot in the pick and roll a lot in Wake Forest, so they gave him the ball for the pick and roll. It was the 4-5, or sometimes he would do guard, like inverted pick and rolls, to try to get on the guard to get a mismatch where he could either post him up or drive past him. And he kind of, like I say, he kind of does the small things that lack athleticism. Now, the one thing is, and Sixers are notorious for making promises to players. He did the shooting drills in the combine, did really well.
Yeah.
Then decided not to play in the scrimmages, and people are saying it's because the NBA team promised him
to already take him.
So he didn't participate in the rest of the scrimmages or anything like that.
And you're likely going to do that if that's a near first round team that's going to do that for you.
So if he gets to the NBA, works on his body, works on his lateral quickness, works on his conditioning, strength and conditioning, those are things that you can help yourself with as you go forward. I just think that he fits so well because Morey has this thing of just having guys that know how to ball analytically, having guys that be a great fit. He might not be that defensive stalwart that you're looking for, but he's going to make the extra pass. He's going to shoot the open shots. He's going to space the floor for Embiid if he plays the 4 with the bench unit. If he got drafted and he's on the floor with Harden, he can do a lot of things. Also, this team is missing, and we could talk about this later when we talk about another prospect. They're missing just guys who can create, right? When you look at creation, it's Harden. Maxey can create for himself. Maxey will improve creating for others. Outside of that, there are no other guards who can do shot creation for themselves and others like Harden. And this guy, he can do it for others.
Yeah.
So I think he would be a good
one
fit.
other thing that I will say is so Jake, he was like the second man, right, in Wake Forest behind like Alanis Williams, right? He's gonna have a more a lesser role,
Hmm.
flat honest. This is what we talked about with EJ Liddell, right?
Yeah.
So with that being said, it's a lot more of an opportunity to kind of focus on a select few skills. And obviously, you talked a lot about him as a shooter. That's going to be his primary responsibility, right? So he's going to be able to kind of grind and focus on that. He's going to be able to at least increase the ratio of his 3 pointers to general field goals, to his 2 point shots. So with that in consideration, like, and especially considering you're going to be getting balls from Harden and Maxey now, like, yeah, really the sky's the limit as a 3 point shooter for him because he's already shown it. He's shown it in workouts. Like that bodes extremely well, for him at the NBA level. So I mean, absolutely, like that makes a ton of sense. Um, I I don't know where he goes because I could see Miami giving him that promise. I could see even Dallas giving him that promise. Um, he's very much a Golden State type player, and of course Philadelphia. Like those are all teams that could absolutely be in on him. So, um, yeah, I mean he very well may end up being the selection, whether it's 23rd, whether they trade down, like whatever the case may be. You give me a guy who knows how to pass the ball, he can rebound, and he's a shooting specialist. Like, yeah, like that's all. If that's all I need to know, like that's great. Like that's a perfectly fine prospect at that point. Like I'll be honest, like he's not at the top of my list. Everything you described, though, love it. Love everything about it. Like those are the players the Sixers need at the end of the day. So again, like if he can focus on we need whomever we select basically to focus on becoming the perfect role player. Liddell needs to work on becoming Grant Williams. Like I said, and uh, I mean, your comp for Jake was Joe Ingles. Like, if he can work on becoming Joe Ingles, perfect, absolutely fantastic. Um, if he's closer to Kyle Anderson, even like that's fine too. Like, if the shot doesn't come along as much, but he improves as a defender and a facilitator, like that's great too. Like, we just need whomever the Sixers pick. You gotta work at being a great complementary fit because that's what the Sixers don't have enough complementary fits. This is what got them in trouble in the postseason. It's like, so we're already talking about star hunting, of course. The rumors are out that Daryl Morey star hunting. And while I get the Bradley Beal thing, specifically thinking about Joel Embiid and how much he wants to play with Beal, depth is why. I mean, obviously the Joel injury, but depth was an extreme weakness of the Sixers during the playoffs. And it's the star players that win games. Like you hear that all the time. But if you look at Boston, look at how deep they are. You look at Golden State, look at how deep they are, right? Dallas was Luka and a bunch of fringe starters, right? Like if you look at like Reggie Bullock, like people were like almost ready to kick him out of the league, like because of lack of production before he came to Dallas, and now he's shown like he's a legit starter in this league. Like I would love Bullock on the Sixers team, Tim Hardaway Jr. People have never been high on. He was a contributor. Spencer Dinwiddie basically got ran out of Washington, right? And now he's a helpful role player with Dallas. So depth again, like that is so often swept under the rug. I get you usually go down to a rotation of 8, but you still need 8 guys, like
You
in
do. You
Philadelphia this
do.
past season, like what do we have? 4? Like is that 4
Four and
people
a
showed up
half.
to the playoff? Four
Four
and
and
a
a
half
half.
showed up to the playoffs. Like that's inexcusable, and a lot of that's on Daryl Morey. So
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that he's self-aware enough to the point where he's thinking, "All right, we got to fix this." But you need guys, like hopefully what Jake Laravia will turn into, like hopefully what EJ Liddell will turn into,
Correct.
like hopefully what Marjan Beauchamp will turn into, and of course, like hopefully our last guy, Wendell Moore can turn into, right?
Yes.
So Wendell Moore, Duke University, absolutely love his game, absolutely love his leadership. Like you look at the team and you're like, all right, well, they're coached by Mike Krzyzewski. They had Paulo Benchera, they had AJ Griffin, right? And Mark Williams too. Mark Williams was a defensive stud this year, right? So you look at that and you're like, okay, well, that's why Duke was so good. And like, yeah, you're not wrong. Like on the court, like those players were all fantastic this year. But then you look at Wendell Moore, and this dude transformed himself from years 1 and 2 to now 3. right? He was a
I think you're on mute.
You can hear me now?
Yep.
I got so excited, and I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands. I knocked my mic cable right out. So, this is what happened when I start talking about Duke players, right? So Wendell Moore, right, completely transformed himself in year 3. Looked a lot
Absolutely.
more like the player who was so highly touted out of high school. And if you like listen to a lot of people talk, like it again, it wasn't just his on the court stuff. Like he grew as a leader. Like he was one of the leaders of the entire team, uh, bringing them all the way to the Final Four last year. And of course, like it absolutely sucked that they ended up losing to North Carolina. But like
Right.
he was a big part, not just what he did on the court, but what he did off the court. And to get a player like that at 23, like I mean, that'd be fantastic. I mean, so what have you seen in Moore's game?
So
What's your attraction to him as a player?
so he was on my board too, right? He was on my board too. My comparisons were Josh Hart, a little Eric Gordon, and then also I put a little Scotty Barnes because in Toronto, they allow Scotty Barnes to kind of become a little bit of a playmaker, give him a chance to be a ball handler in certain situations. And I think Wendell Moore can do that as well. He can have some tertiary ball handling roles on a team like the Sixers with the bench unit where
Yeah.
you can allow him to necessarily run some pick and rolls or on the second action on the second side of the court after the first
Yeah.
action, swing the ball to him, he can make decisions. The one
Yeah.
thing I really liked about him, one, his IQ offensively.
Yeah.
All signs point to him being a good playmaker. And again, Sixers need more guys
Yeah.
who can play make. I think
Mhm.
that he has a high basketball IQ. A lot of the film I watched specifically by his passing, not only
Yeah.
good in the pick and roll, but the extra pass. He's not a guy where we get the ball, swing. He's going to catch it,
Mhm.
immediately swing it to the open man. There's no pump fakes, no nothing. He always tries.
Yeah.
He might be open too, but he sees the closeout coming, and I'm gonna get it to the next guy. Those are
Yeah.
those unselfish plays that the
Mhm.
Sixers need, especially with ball dominant guys like
Yeah.
Embiid and Harden, right?
Harden.
And
Yeah.
Maxey too at some points in
Yeah.
time
Because
as well.
honestly, Maxi cooks best with the ball in his hand.
Yes. So you have some of that playmaking I liked as well. I
Yeah.
like that he has he's a solid shooter, although
His
he's
first 2
streaky.
years was kind of rough, but this year he looked a lot better. Like it
But
was
he's
like night
streaky
and
though,
day.
so he could be hot or he can be
Yeah.
extremely cold. But
Yeah.
I I think a lot of some of the skewing of some of his 3-point numbers, and maybe you've
Yeah.
seen this as well, is what I noticed that looking around, like as far as the closeout, instead of attacking the closeout to drive, he'll shoot a sidestep three. And
Yeah.
some of his mechanics are a little off after the pump fake,
Mm.
and some of those clink off the front of the rim. So I think that can skew some of his things. But when he's sitting there wide
Yeah.
open,
Oh yeah. It's nice. It is. Like and so like my thing with him, right? So um his measurables, right, are insane. So he is like a little shorter, I guess, than you'd want. Like he comes out at like
6'5", right?
uh well it's so like without shoes, it's 6'4" and a quarter,
Okay.
and then with shoes is 6'5" and a half.
Okay.
Right. So you kind of you want like 6'6", 6'7",
Right.
ideally. But it's like that's not bad to be to 6'4" to 6'5" and a half, right?
Mhm.
What's more impressive is his wingspan. That's at 7.5 feet, right?
Yes.
He was number 3 at the combine in wingspan differential,
Oh,
right? That's an 8.25 difference, right? The only people above him were Ron Harper out of Rutgers, who I really like. Like if Daryl Morey does that whole buying a draft pick thing again this year,
second round pick.
Ron, yeah, oh yeah, if he buys a second round pick, like tail end or even an undrafted guy, Ron Harper, like we're going to
Mhm.
get a profile up on him. Big Ron Harper guy, right?
Mhm.
Right out of Rutgers, local kid. And then the only other player above them, and this is another guy who we're going to talk about in more depth another time because there's a lot to say about him. Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara, right? So to be third among that list, like that's a pretty that's incredible, right? So that wingspan differential, like that plays so much into his aid on defense, right? He does a lot of he gets a lot of thighball steals, basically. Like he really
I
knows how
saw
to
that
use
too.
his length. He uses a lot of his length to his advantage. And if you look at like his comparable measurables, like again, you're missing the height, but there's a little like Jalen Brown to the measurables. There's a little, and here's this one, like this is what I think his ceiling is, right? As if we're looking at player comparisons, Baby Iguodala, right? Like because if you look at him, if he can keep growing as a passer, he's not the passer Iguodala was, but if he can keep growing as a passer, like he can he can play point forward at times. I think based on what I've seen so far. Like if he keeps growing as a defender, like again, he's not going to be Iguodala as a defender. I highly doubt that. Uh, but he can be a high end defender for your team with a little bit of an inconsistent shot. So like Baby Iguodala, like that's his ceiling. I hope he gets there, especially if he's with Philadelphia. Uh, but when you're looking at like who in the league right now does he kind of compare to? I see a lot of Caleb Martin, right? People in Philadelphia love the Martin twins, and for good reason, right? Caleb is even more aggressive and physical, and you see a lot more of that athleticism show up in Caleb. With you've seen that with Miami, whether that's the difference between Heat culture and Hornet culture, whatever the case may be. You know, uh, Caleb was huge for Miami this year, right? So for him, it's 3-and-D with rim rattling dunking ability, and it's kind of that simple when you look at the comparisons, right? Like there are so few players who can do that with consistency. Like they bring the hustle, the energy. They can shoot, they can defend. I think he can defend 1 through 4. If I'm being honest with you,
I
like
agree. That's what I saw from him as well. 1 through 4
yeah,
switches. He's definitely switchable. Solid chest, so it allows him. He tries to
yes,
like um, body up on the bigger fours, and it's not like
yeah,
it's 1999 where in the fours are 6'11". We talking about 6'7", 6'8",
exactly.
6'9" guys.
Exactly. So I think that Moore can do that too, and especially with that added wingspan, like that's a huge help to him. So I have a lot of faith in Moore going forward, and again, like if he's like Caleb Martin, basically, like I think a lot of people would take that, and especially because a lot of people want Martin in free agency. Apparently, he is all set to return to Miami. It's basically in their court,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not he comes back. Like this could be your only chance to get a Caleb Martin player.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all for more. Um, Looking at 23, Liddell's still at the top of the board for me, but
I was going to ask you
more,
that.
like that's the whole point about like how deep this is for role players. Like at this point in the draft, is like you kind of can't go wrong to a
Mm-hmm.
degree. Like if you go more, I'm for it. If you go Liddell, I'm all for it. We talked about Jake. We talked about Beauchamp. Like
Mm-hmm.
people love Bryce McGowan's. Dalen Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many players like, and if someone falls too, like I mean, Kendall Brown has I've found out a lot of haters because he doesn't have the most versatile offensive game, right? But he's a jump shot away from being a star. I feel like Kendall Brown. So Patrick Baldwin, people love. I'm a little less so on
I'm
that
not.
end,
I'm a
or
little. I'm not.
Jaden
I'm not
Hardy
high on
too.
him. I'm not high on
Yeah,
Patrick.
I'm not a Patrick Ball. But listen, in his defense, right? It is there's a lot of bias because like, he played for his dad last year and it was the worst situation. We've seen players play for their parents before, and it usually doesn't work out, like Austin Rivers was better off after, playing with the Clippers. Like he saw the most opportunity with the Clippers. And so like in that sense, he could show some things, but I feel like he was a better player in Denver than he was with the Clippers, so it's sometimes you want to play for your parents, or I guess more
Mm-hmm.
so it's accurate to say your parents want you to play for them,
Yeah.
but it's like sometimes it's not the best for you.
All right. Right.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's
so
how that's what my
yeah,
draft. Those were the way you kind of rank those. That was
yeah,
my same ranking as well.
yeah. And there's just so much like again, there's just so much potential with this draft, and that's why I'm so happy that we got the 23rd pick. Like the the optionality's there, you know. So there's going to be excitement like down in the minute. And again, we could still trade the pick away, and that's still be exciting. You know, like if you trade up, if you trade it away, whatever the case. Like, do you work this into a deal to land like Alex Caruso? Like, again, you pair Thibault with the pick and figure out the rest from there, and maybe you get like Caruso and Javonte Green or something like that. Like, there's so many avenues that you can go down from here, and it's awesome. It's just nice to have options. Considering it felt like we were, you know, when the postseason ended, it felt like all right, we're going to sign Harden to a max deal, and we're not going to be able to do anything else. We may not have our pick, you know, and everything has changed so much. Like again, Harden still looks like he's going to take a pay cut. We have the 23rd overall pick. Uh, Daryl Morey is one of the most thrifty uh, front office members out there. So we'll see what happens, man. But
Yeah.
future looks bright.
Yes. And the last thing I'll say is, if I mentioned before in my post, last couple of years, Sixers have definitely hit on some of their picks. So I do have faith that whoever they pick at 23, if
Yeah.
they keep the pick, will be
Yeah.
somebody who'll be able to contribute.
And let me tell you this right now, okay? Jaden Springer is a player, okay? There's so many people that doubt Springer. I had a chance to watch him up close and personal. Like, I was covering the Blue Coats this year. Like, dude can play. It's not his fault that he was sent down to the G League all year. Like, that doesn't mean that he can't play. He got a lot of opportunity with them, and he was inconsistent at times. I'm not here to tell you that, you know, he's going to be Marcus Smart right out the jump or anything like that. But he brings energy, defensive intensity. He's an absolutely solid athlete, and that jump shot's coming along. So, you know, let's we love Paul Reed, we love Charles Bassey, we love Isaiah Joe. This team does have young talent already. Jaden Springer is going to be like a second first round pick this year for Philadelphia, assuming that he gets the minutes, which he should, because he's deserved it at this point. So next season, looking exciting. A little bit closer to the draft. I feel like now's a good time to announce we will have a live draft show. Okay. So we are going to be streaming the draft or not streaming the draft because we can't, for copyright reasons, actually show the draft. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a panel of writers, Sixers writers, discussing the draft, going through pick by pick, not just the Sixers, but we're going to start a little bit before the draft, go through one all the way through the second round, right? Start to finish. We're going to be talking about this. So definitely join us. Draft is June 23rd. We will get start times out there for you, but absolutely please come join us for the draft. We're going to have a great time.
Can't wait.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, again, this has been myself, Zach Ciavolella, here with Justin Crosby, and together we just hit you with the Baseline Scoop.